Let's go ahead and get started. Oh my goodness. This is amazing. Boy, you want to have a big crowd. Just get Mrs. Kathy in your speaker. That's amazing. Make sure it's a really good topic that everybody remembers. Or both, yeah, right. So everybody, welcome very much. Welcome to the Central Upper Peninsula and NMU Archives. This is our edition of Evening at the Archives for this semester, and Evening at the Archives is designed to do what it's doing today, and that's bring members of the public and others into the archives to advertise it, that we're here, that we have collections that you can use, which Jim did. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And it's here, and it's open to the public 5 days a week, 10 to 5 each day. You're welcome to come in here anytime you'd like when you want to come in, when you need to do research or something. My name is Marcus Robbins. I'm the University Archivist, and this is Jim Paquette, which I'll introduce in a moment. Before I do so, however, I want to talk about, since I have a captured audience here, and this is about the archives to some extent, some of the records that Jim used in his research are actually right over there. They're part of the Cleveland Cliffs Iron Mining Company records that we have here in the archives, an extensive collection documenting the history of the iron mining industry here in the Upper Peninsula from roughly the period of the 1850s, just before the Civil War, all the way through the 1960s. And there's a great story as to how we got that collection, but I won't regale you with that at this time. However, I wanted to point out our website. So all the information you want to find out about us and our collections are right here. Most in particular, though, I want to point out where you can get online access to these records here, the Cleveland Cliffs Iron Mining Company records. With a grant, federal grant in 2009, this was our first major digitization project that we did. We digitally scanned and placed online about 16,000 documents, 250 maps, and roughly 200 photographs from the Cleveland Cliffs Iron Mining Company records. And you can. This is a woefully archaic website. I'm sorry. We're in the process of transitioning it to a new site, which I'll mention just in a moment. But it's kind of difficult to use. But the place to go would be to click on here, the EID finding aid, and here you'll find all of the different record series that have been digitized, including the annual reports right there in connection. Look at them at your leisure. They're pretty remarkable. Quite a lot of extensive information, particularly about the Barnes-Hecker and what happened to the families and afterwards, and the disaster itself. The other thing I want to mention is Uplink. This is our new initiative. It's called the Upper Peninsula Digital Network. It's also grant-funded, federal National Archives grant. Helped to fund this project. And this is a region-wide Upper Peninsula collective or collaborative effort among all of the heritage organizations in the UP. And we're identifying and revealing through digitization the historic records that are out there. And you can access those records by looking at each of the different historical organizations, heritage organizations that are members of Uplink. And I want to point out real quickly that we now have a mining journal online from Annika, 1886 through 1945, I believe.
It's 1868 to 1940. Yeah.
Okay, 1940, and it's continuing to grow with new digital records. We've also got all of Delta County's papers coming online, Menominee, Manistee, Grand Marais. Pretty soon we're going to have a lot of our digital records online through Uplink. So I really encourage you to visit Uplink and spend some time looking around. There's also other mining industry records in there, including copper country records on Uplink as well. So with that, I want to introduce our guest speaker tonight, the one and only, the incomparable, Jim Paquette. Now, Jim has done incredible work in researching what happened at the Barnes-Hecker, but he's well known for other things. I think most of you realize that. His claim to fame, his big claim to fame, is that in the 1980s, correct, he discovered the arrowhead point that confirmed that Paleo-Indians inhabited the Upper Peninsula, and that was a huge discovery. He is, I hasten to use the word amateur archaeologist because there's nothing amateur about his work. Avocational, might be better. He doesn't have a PhD in archaeology, but boy, he is an incredible archaeologist. And And he is also a recent recipient of NMU's Distinguished Alumni Achievement Award this fall as well. So with that, I turn it over to Jim. Thank you very much.
Here we go. Okay, we'll put this on slide. There we go. Before we get started, a lot of times, whenever I speak about the Barnes-Hecker, a lot of the audiences, which are more say up from the Ishpemagani area, most of the people at least are aware of where the Barnes-Hecker mine is located. But it's surprising to me how few people actually do know where it is. And so I just wanted to start off with a map of where, these are all the iron ore mines that were by the Ishpemagani area, by the way. Every time you see a little red square, those are all iron ore mines. And as you can see, the Barnes-Hecker mine is located out in West Ishpeming. It's west of North Lake and west of the Greenwood location. Across, maybe just south of the Wawanoa and Gulf Club, but on the other side of the highway. And so that's where the mine site actually is. The title of tonight's program is simply it's why, the Untold Story of the Barnes-Hecker mine disaster. But what you're going to get tonight is a shortened summary of the full report. And in the full report, which is the cause analysis investigation report, it consists of over 400 PowerPoint slides. So we would be here for 4 to 5 hours for me to go through those slides. And in those slides, it contains all of the evidence. It talks about the methodology that I used in order to do the investigation, and a whole long list of things, including mine history and that. And it actually is in 2 parts. The full presentation is in, as you see, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is Barnes-Hecker mine history and what happens immediately in the aftermath of that. Okay, and there's really an interesting history, because in order to do the root cause analysis, you really had to go back and see, okay, what was the company saying? What were they doing when all of this happened? What was the government saying? What was the county saying? What were they doing? And I had to take all of that into account. And then the second part is the determination of the causes. And for this, it took a tremendous amount of research because I had to educate myself in geology, essentially, in how in underground mining, and what would be the causes of this particular accident. Tonight, we're going to be here a little while. They gave me an hour, but it might go a little bit beyond that. I'm going to talk really, really fast. And one of the things also that'll happen a lot of times. Usually when I give a talk, anybody who's been to a lot of my lectures in the past know that I don't usually ever read from a slide. In this case, because I put the information not in a book written form, but in a PowerPoint form, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll read. So you just read along with me, so you can excuse me if I read what's on my own slides here. But anyway, today, November 3rd, it's 96th anniversary of the Barnes-Hecker mine disaster. Think about that. It happened on day shift, 1926. And that was just before lunchtime. Barnes-Hecker mine suffered a catastrophic cave-in, and it was directly over the mined-out area of level 1 on the west end of the mine. Okay, and it was just a complete disaster. Obviously, 51 men were killed. 33 were from Ishpeming, 18 were from West Ishpeming, which included North Lake, Greenwood, Diorite, Barnes-Hecker mine location. Left behind 41 widows. 5 of them widows were pregnant at the time. 132 minor children. Of course, this is the grieving family of the Trudell family, and Clifford Trudell, whose grandpa was killed, was one of my best friends, and he passed away here just recently. And this is the Trudell family in how they were left. And you can see the looks on their faces. The Mining Journal covered it immediately, and here you can see this is what you would have saw in the Mining Journal. Barnes-Hecker workers trapped like rats when quicksand and water dropped, shaft hills quickly. Brothers and fathers and sons drowned in mud in the worst mine disaster in the history of the Upper Peninsula. This is actually, this iron ore hard rock mining disaster is also the worst in the state of Michigan, but it's also the worst in the United States. The worst hard rock mining disaster that ever occurred. Okay. Now, one of the things that we know that has stood out through the years, and I've studied the Barnes-Hecker mine disaster and really paid a lot of attention to the families that were left behind. And one of the things that really stands out is that no negligence or fault of any kind was then or ever placed upon the miner's employee and the mine owner, CCI, for the tragic deaths of those 51 men. Okay, And that's because there has never been a professional safety investigation to actually determine the immediate and basic causes of the Barnes-Hecker mine disaster. And that's until now. And it was 3.5 years ago, it was 3 years ago in May, that I visited the Barnes-Hecker mine location, the Barnes-Hecker mine disaster area. And I stood on the side of that, what is now a pond where the 41 of the men are still lying down there. And I made a promise to them that I would bring them justice, that I would use my skills, my experience as a union safety guy and as a management safety person for Cleveland Cliffs, that I was going to bring my experience, and what I was going to do was I was going to figure it out. And I had the perfect tool to do it, because one of the things that when I was working as a senior staff safety rep for Cliffs, one of the things that I did was I managed their accident investigation system. I helped author it. In fact, this particular cover up of the guidebook, that's my work. I'm the one who actually authored the guidebook at Cleveland Cliffs. And what it is it was an accident investigation and an incident analysis system that was very strict in its requirements. And it really finally got to what happened, when it happened, who was involved, where did it happen, how, and really what it was all about was why did this actually happen? And we went back and not only tried to determine immediate causes, but we tried to get back and to figure out, okay, what were the basic causes? What were the real reasons? What were the problems within our management structure that allowed this to happen? Okay? And that was because only by identifying the true, immediate, and basic causes of any mine accident or incident could we at Cleveland Cliffs develop necessary preventive actions to stop it from ever happening again. And I got to say that we were successful at this. Both the union and the company worked together on this system, and it really worked. And Cliffs went from having, if you go way back, of course, they're as unsafe as everybody. But if you go to today, they're one of the safest mining operations in the world. A lot of it is because of that joint effort between union and management to put together this immediate and basic cause analysis system. And so that's the system that I used to go after this one. Even though this happened over 90 years ago, what I did was I followed what we call our loss causation model, where you start with the loss over here, and of course it was the 51 fatalities. That was the accident, if you will. And the incident that caused that, or that led to that, was the cave-in. But the cave-in then, so what I had to do was to try to figure out, okay, what were the immediate causes? What were the immediate causes? What were the substandard practices, acts, and conditions that were present that led to it? And then I had to go and find out the basic causes, which was really, well, why did these immediate causes, why did they exist? And why were they, if there was something there, why was it ignored? And ultimately what you do is that you get down to the primary basic cause, and you start looking at your own management system. You start looking at your standards and your compliance with those standards. And when you do that, when you get to that, that's where you come up with your corrective actions. And once you zero in on that, you nail it. Okay? Now, in order to do this investigation, you can imagine the amount of research that it took, and it's taken, like I say, over 3 years to put this thing together. And what I had to do was try to, I didn't rely on anything that any historian said about the disaster. I didn't rely on anybody telling me anything. I went back in time, and I gathered first-hand accounts that were available and other primary documents from various sources. And I was amazed at how much information was out there. I had to go dig it up. I had to go to this museum, I had to go online, I had to go here to there to everywhere. But it was incredible how many first-hand accounts and how many timely documents were there. And of course, as Marcus said, a real godsend to me was the NMU archives here. And it was the online Cleveland Cliffs Iron Company records. It's all of their company, it's all of their records, internal records. These weren't records that were in the newspapers. These weren't papers that were given out to people. These are their internal records, what they were saying to themselves when they reported, when all of the mines had a report. And I just want to say this, Marcus, you had made mention of the fact that if you ever want to find good information on the Barnes-Hecker, it's here. If you want to find good information on any of the iron ore mines, the information is here. Of Cleveland Cliffs mines. Detailed information from annual reports, from geological reports, to safety reports, to under production reports. Plus there's maps. It's incredible what they have here in these archives. And I really relied on that because it was really in their own words